Hilary Price's day began before the sun could peek over the horizon, when the sound of the alarm clock on her bedside table rang out, pulling her out of the depths of a sleep she could never remember. With a deep sigh, she silenced the noise and climbed out of bed to prepare for another day at the Gold Jar, an upscale restaurant in the heart of Seattle, where she had been working as a waitress for more than 2 years. At 36 years old, Hilary had become one of the restaurant's most diligent waitresses, adept at meeting and exceeding all the demands of the prestigious customers who flocked there. Her heart was woven with threads of kindness and dedication, qualities that her customers often failed to perceive beneath the dark color of her skin, being carried away by prejudices that prevented them from appreciating what was really important she had to offer: her heart. Her shift began as usual, at 7 in the morning, with her unpleasant boss briskly handing her a list of tables to serve. The slight undercurrent of discrimination between her and the rest of the staff never failed to sting, but she swallowed it with a resilient smile as she balanced plates, took orders, and catered to whims with unwavering patience. She was a black woman in a white man's world, and worse, in a world of luxury dominated by white people whose attitude towards all those who were different always tended to be the same: indifference, mild looks of contempt, or simply pretending she didn't exist. Yet Price never let these adversities affect her service at the restaurant. To her, her customers were more than just hungry people with pockets overflowing with money. They were people, individuals with their own complexities, who deserved kindness and respect. It didn't matter if they didn't notice how hard she tried to fit in and make their day more pleasant. She remained impassive, with an eternal smile on her lips and a kind word for anyone who needed it. "You should get another job, honey. I don't think you're making the most of your potential in that place full of spoiled, rich people," her mother told her over and over again, every time her daughter called her in a bad mood for having had a bad day at the restaurant. "I like my job, Mom. I love being a waitress and the restaurant atmosphere. I don't think I could live without it. I don't mind the nasty people. There are also very nice customers who do value my work. That's why I continue to work hard every day," she replied laconically, ending the discussion. And indeed, amidst the discrimination Hilary had to endure on a daily basis from most of the diners who came to the prestigious restaurant, Price also found pockets of solace. The elderly couple who greeted her with warm smiles every time she brought them the menu, the young woman engrossed in her novel who always left a generous tip, and a small but no less important group of regulars who acknowledged her hard work with gratitude. That day seemed the same as the previous ones, and Hilary was mentally preparing herself for all that she would have to do and endure for over 6 hours of service. But what she couldn't prepare for, and no one could expect, was what was going to happen that day during the noon meal service. Something that would blow the patience of the gentle waitress out of the water and eventually inspire a revolution within the hospitality industry. Meal service began with the usual frenzy. The Gold Jar was buzzing with activity, customers were arriving with the promise of a midday feast, and Hilary was at the center of this whirlwind, her tray laden with delicacies, her hands sure and her mind attentive to the myriad of requests coming from all parts of the room. But amidst all the bustle, something unexpected happened that managed to catch the waitress's attention and distract her from her routine. In the midst of the chaos, a young boy named Tommy entered the restaurant with his mother. But Tommy was different, an autistic boy who needed more understanding than the rest, and who looked at Hilary in fear as he sat next to his mother at the farthest table. It was evident that the child was uncomfortable and had been forced to go there. As soon as their eyes met, Price was moved by the boy and wished she could comfort him and tell him that everything would be all right and that he shouldn't be afraid. But Hilary had a long list of tasks to accomplish, and taking care of reassuring an autistic child was not among them. Tommy was more sensitive to the hum of the world and the clamor of the restaurant. A mixture of clinking silverware, chatter, and the kitchen orchestra seemed to reverberate in the child's soul, with too much force. Price realized, as she went back and forth from table to table and took orders, that this child was at the end of his rope and needed urgent help. But she still couldn't do anything about it. The dishes kept coming out, and if she was even a minute late, the whole service would suffer. Until finally the inevitable happened. The boy couldn't take the pressure any longer. His face crumpled, and tears ran down his cheeks as a panic attack seized him. And then, amidst all the indifferent faces that looked at the child and his mother with a mixture of astonishment and contempt, Hillary acted on her instinct and, forgetting her duties and what the customers and her boss might think, ran to the child's aid. She hastily placed her tray on a nearby table as she knelt down next to the terrified child, who kept screaming as he cried, with his hands covering his face. With soothing whispers and a calming touch, the waitress tried to create a bubble of tranquility around him, a shield against the sensory assault of the restaurant. "Shh. It's okay. Nothing bad is going to happen to you, little one. I'm right here with you. Forget the noise, shh," whispered the waitress sweetly while caressing his arms. And apparently, it worked, because only a few minutes later, the child began to breathe normally and had stopped screaming. However, this precious act of compassion on the part of the waitress of just 5 minutes would have serious consequences for everyone, especially for her. As she expected, her boss did not take kindly to her act of solidarity with the autistic child, and as soon as the boy had calmed down, he decided to tackle his employee and teach her an exemplary lesson in front of an entire restaurant. Apparently, her boss saw not a waitress helping a distressed child, but an employee abandoning her duty, creating a spectacle and disrupting the smooth running of an upscale restaurant. His voice, normally hidden behind a veil of fake smiles, was now raw with disgust, and he was nastier than ever with her. "You are fired. How dare you interject your personal interests or what you think you should do into the service of a restaurant like this? The diners always come first. That's all you should be thinking about instead of playing hero and playing child psychologist in the middle of a food service. Did you get it? Goodbye. I never want to see you here again, ever," reprimanded her. Her boss had a face full of anger and contempt, while Price tried to hold it together and not burst into tears in front of hundreds of people. Her priority remained Tommy, whose trembling hands slowly calmed under her gentle attention. Reprimand gripped her, but she didn't let it cloud her empathy. As she comforted the boy, she reaffirmed her dedication to her job, not as a waitress serving food, but as a human being serving humanity, and before her boss had finished yelling at her that she was fired, she knew what she was supposed to do. After hearing everything her boss had to say to her and watching her stride off across the room in a rage, Hillary stood amidst the murmurs and stares from her former workplace. In the face of adversity, however, she stood her ground. She didn't give in to fear or grief. She waited for everything to calm down and for everyone to get on with whatever it was they were doing. And then, without making the slightest sound or saying goodbye to anyone, she left. She was aware that everyone was looking at her, some with pity, some with contempt, and some didn't even know what had happened. But they were shamelessly scrutinizing her because they knew she was the cause of so much commotion and were looking for some refreshing gossip to liven up the meal. That's what she had become, one more scandal that would reverberate around the restaurant tables for weeks until it finally fell into oblivion like all the others. What Hillary didn't know was that her story would not be just another one among the rest, and that what started as the rumor of a scandal would end up becoming something much bigger and revolutionary, something that would change her life forever. The next morning, Price awoke to a harsher reality than she had ever known before. She had no job, and the silence and monotony of a life without obligations was beginning to weigh like a burden. Her uniform hung in the closet, now a ghostly reminder of a past life. The injustice of her controversial dismissal was a heavy slab on her heart, a silent, throbbing ache that was pushing its way through and reminding her that all she had accomplished during her years of working at the restaurant had been for nothing. In the silence of her small apartment, Hillary found herself questioning all her actions of the previous day, doubting her instinct to help the poor child and her reaction to her boss's anger. Should she have acted differently? Should she have remained detached, sticking strictly to the role her superior had assigned her? These questions swirled in her mind, a corrosive mixture of regret and confusion preventing her from thinking clearly. But the answers to all these questions would come very soon, and they would be given to her by the person she least expected. The day after her firing, Hillary was starting to feel a little more upbeat, and in an attempt to take her mind off the restaurant and the painful words of her former boss, she decided to start looking for a new job and began sending out her resume to different restaurants in the area where she thought she might fit in. What she did not know, and would never have imagined, is that at the same time she was looking for a new job, another person was starting a revolution in social networks in her favor, denouncing the degrading and racist treatment that the waitress suffered in front of the entire restaurant, the mother of the autistic child, Tommy. It turned out that Tommy's mother, Mrs. Joanna Parker, overwhelmed with guilt and gratitude towards the waitress, decided to shed light on the incident at the Gold Jar by sharing a controversial post that set social media ablaze within hours. Mrs. Parker, who happened to be a prestigious businesswoman who moved in the highest circles of the city, praised Hillary's compassion and intervention to help her son who suffers from autism, and criticized the restaurant's lack of empathy and the nasty way in which her boss decided to fire her. That waitress deserved the applause of the whole room, and not to be dismissed as if she had committed the worst crime. My son Tommy suffers from autism spectrum disorder. He is a complex child with whom we must have more patience. He is afraid of noises, and in crowded places, he tends to get overwhelmed easily. Tommy was on the verge of a nervous breakdown that I did not know how to manage. I was overwhelmed by work, and I had not had a good day. I admit it, I shouldn't have taken my son with me to the restaurant, but the babysitter couldn't come, and I couldn't think of anything else. If it hadn't been for that woman, my son would have run out of there, and the consequences could have been disastrous, started the post by saying. The way the restaurant manager treated his employee was despicable. He insulted her and yelled at her in front of the whole room, and on top of that, he did it for helping a child with special needs. It is totally unfair. The one who should lose his job is that man and not the waitress. It is clear that this is a case of racism in the workplace, and that if it had been a white waitress, things would have been very different, she concluded. The post was accompanied by a couple of photos of the restaurant and another of her son, little Tommy. With a single click, the post began to spread across the digital landscape, being shared, retweeted across the country in a matter of hours. The story of the compassionate waitress and the unfair situation began to gain traction. People from all corners of the world were touched by Hillary's kindness, and her selfless act resonated deeply in their hearts. Meanwhile, oblivious to all that was happening and what was ahead of her, Hillary continued in her search for a new job until she received a text message from her mother that brought her back to the real world. "Look at your Instagram! You're all over the place, honey," her mother told her in the message. When she took to social media, what Hillary discovered left her speechless. She was showered with comments of support, and the outrage over her dismissal was palpable. Customers even pledged to boycott the Gold Jar, and others shared similar stories of discrimination and praised Hillary for standing up against such practices. Within hours, Hillary had gone from being an unemployed black waitress to a symbol of resistance, empathy, and compassion that took the internet by storm. But the surprises weren't over for this humble Seattle waitress. The best was yet to come. In the midst of the flood of messages from her new admirers, Price received a message from the owner of a major restaurant chain, The Good Taste. offering her a job that was impossible to refuse. The Good Taste was known for its employee-friendly policies, its service to the community, and its strong emphasis on respect and kindness. It was the kind of place where Hillary had always dreamed of working, and where she would achieve the happiness and respect she had longed for so many years. Hillary accepted the job offer without batting an eye, and just 2 days later she was working in a beautiful restaurant in downtown Seattle that had nothing to envy the Gold Jar. From the first moment she set foot in that place, Hillary knew she had done the right thing, and that all the bad things she had gone through at her previous job had led her to this moment. Literally, the Good Taste was nirvana in the hospitality world. Any foodie would want to work there. The employees were not just workers. They were part of a family united by the chain's principles of kindness, empathy, and community service. The restaurant chain embraced Hillary wholeheartedly and made her story a symbol of its values. And so it was that the story of a black waitress who worked tirelessly and was unjustly fired by her boss ended up becoming a powerful tool for change, a beacon of hope and inspiration for all those who, like her, had once suffered similar mistreatment in their jobs and needed to know that another alternative was possible. The story of resilience, compassion, and redemption ends on a note of hope, a poignant reminder that even in the face of adversity, goodness prevails. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.